How's it going, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I'm joined yet again by my co-host, Drew Johnson. You can find both of us on X at Dalton_Trigg and at Coach Drew33. The Mavs finished their 5-game homestand 2-3. Wasn't great. Wasn't great. And that's sugarcoating it. I mean, it's just so many letdowns. And I mean, the latest loss was against the Phoenix Suns. They lost to them in a game where they just couldn't seem to hit the easy shots. Well, they gave up 114 points to the Suns yet again in this second matchup. Um, and they ended up losing 114 to 113. It was very close. The Mavs, they actually had a 6-point lead with about 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, but then Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant started going band for band, shooting crazy shots, threes. Kyrie was getting into the paint. And then there was a sequence there in the last minute or so where it was a tie game. Um, let's go back a little bit further. It was the Mavs were up by 2. They forced a miss on the other end. They could have. It was Kevin Durant. He missed a shot from the top of the key with about 30 seconds left. If they would have secured that rebound, there still would have been about a 12-second difference between the game and shot clock. So the Suns probably could have just played it out and hoped that the Mavs miss. But the Mavs would have had a chance to put the Suns away. And KD missed that shot, and the Mavs give up an offensive rebound to Yusuf Nurkic. And he dunks the ball. So, that tied the game. And then toward the end of the game, the Mavs end up fouling Gafford. He fouled out of the game with .8 remaining. And look, I know some people don't think it was a foul. It definitely was a foul. Was it was it a foul that you want an NBA official calling in that specific situation? Probably not. It was. I mean, it wasn't like an aggressive foul. but by the definition, it was a foul. And I was shocked that they gave the Mavs .8 after that. So the Mavs did have a shot there at the end. And then with the Suns up 114, 113, and there's .8 left, they called a timeout. So you got to advance the ball past half court. The final shot was Luka catching it way out, toward the logo, heaving up a 3, and it was actually on line. If he had gotten a little more under it, it was about a foot short. And the Mavs lose. So obviously, you and I talked about this, and we talked about it with some other people too. You would love to see something going toward the rim in that situation. I get it though. You got 5 defenders, and then you got 4 players because you have one inbounder. It's hard to do with .8. I would have personally loved to see like some double screen action to get Clay on the move toward the basket, like throw it over the top and let Clay catch it because he's got such a quick trigger. I would have loved to have seen something like that, and maybe it wouldn't have worked. Maybe the ball would have been deflected or something like that. But I just, I'm not a fan of having a last second shot situation like that and heaving one up from half court. Even though Luka is fully capable of making that shot, I just don't think it's the highest percentage. So there is a lot to unpack from this one. Very frustrating game overall. I don't think I could handle a 7-game series of this if it ever were to happen later down the line. But what do you think about this latest gut-wrenching loss?
I think it all goes back to the point that you were making earlier. We've made it in multiple pods, and really the first person to make this point was Rick Carlisle. And it's that, this is a first quarter league. We cannot continuously fall back early. We just can't. It's too far to climb. It's too mentally exhausting for us to be able to do that night in and night out. Sometimes you're successful doing it, but if you're having to come back in every single game, that is absolutely mentally exhausting. Not to mention it's just hard to do. And at the very end there, there were some questionable decisions. I want to say in that last play, I went back and rewound it and looked at the set. I want to say that the first look was actually for Klay Thompson.
Okay.
It was sort of it was a set that we've seen Brad Stevens run, especially back at Butler. They call it the winner set, or I've heard it called the winner set, where you're literally throwing a skip pass over the top to someone coming off that screen. Except this time, instead of the screening being done under the rim, it was being done at the top of the key. And Klay Thompson split out as we all saw, and then Luka was the second option. Now, obviously, they were going to snuff that out because they know they want to get the ball to Klay. What I would have liked to have seen in that situation was using Luka as a potential decoy, maybe something to free Klay up. Anything to free Klay up. But instead, you get Luka with a catch at pretty much the logo. And then on top of that, because he didn't get any freeing up at all on the catch, he had to fade away. So it was really just a poorly, I don't want to say it was a poorly executed set, but it just did not go the way the Mavs wanted to. Like the defense did not bite on what they needed them to bite on.
I'm not crazy. I'm not like a massive X's and O's type of guy, but I'm not crazy. So what you saw is they were trying to go to Klay, like I was hoping for, but it just didn't materialize.
I do think that.
It makes me feel a little bit better. Makes me feel a little bit better that the first option wasn't just, throw it out to Luka because it's going to be an open half court heave. So, so look, I'm looking at the last Mavs Suns game, which was the second game of the season in Phoenix. I'm looking at this one tonight. The good news is that the last time the Mavs played them, they shot under 40%. Tonight, they shot 51.2%. So, brought the field goal percentage up. Let's see. The bench, though, in that first game, the bench only had 9 points. Well, guess what they had tonight? Total 9. They had 9 total points again, which is crazy to me. And now, look, given PJ Washington and Derek Lively were both out in this game, so you're obviously going to be shorthanded. It goes down the list there, but it's disappointing, especially when you have a guy like, say, Quentin Grimes, for example. He was considered one of the biggest off-season additions, and he just hasn't hardly done anything. He's not taking many shots. I'm looking at the field goal percent. Like, here's all the bench players that played. Omax Prosper played 3 minutes. He was 0 for 1. Kessler Edwards, 2 minutes. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. 0 for 1. Dwight Powell, 25 minutes, 1 for 1. Spencer Dinwiddie, 28 minutes, 1 for 2. Quentin Grimes, 9 minutes, 1 for 1. Jaden Hardy, 3 minutes, 0 for 0. So
that's strange.
Yeah, that's really strange for Hardy. He normally gets up shots quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you had 6 total field goal attempts from the bench. That's playing scared. Like, you can't do that. You gotta have some, like, if that's gonna be the continued trend with this bench group, if Grimes isn't gonna take more of an initiative to try and get his offense going, throw in Jazzy and Gortman, who the Mavs signed to a 2-way contract before the season started, because we've seen what he can do. He can shoot the ball. Put him in there. He's not scared. He's not scared to let it fly. So, I don't know. But here's a quote from Jason Kidd immediately following this game. He has had enough of the bench, lack of production from the bench. And I quote, this is straight from Jason Kidd. He said, "For whatever reason, we're getting off to a slow start. It's got to be addressed. Somebody's got to come with some effing energy. We're effing flat. Our bench stinks right now. As deep as we are, we got to get someone to effing participate off the bench. So there's a lot of F bombs in there from Kidd. He has had it. we, we're only 9 games into the season. The Mavs are 5-4, and Jason Kidd has already reached his limit. And I get it, because we were all frustrated watching this game. I remember at halftime of this, the Mavs were down 63-50 at halftime, and I just remember talking to you and that the other people in the group were in about it, and I was just like, man, the vibes for this team just feel off right now. Now they showed some life, and all things considered, as good as the Suns have looked so far this season, the fact that they were able, to have a chance to win this game without having 2 of your key players in Derek Lively and PJ Washington, that's kind of something you can hang your hat on. But when it comes down to it, it's the same old story. The Mavs get down early. They show some energy and make a little bit of a comeback, a fake comeback, as I like to call it, when they don't finish it out, and then you still end up losing the game. And it's very frustrating. The only quality win the Mavs have this season was the one in Minnesota, which, it gave us – it was very reminiscent of the Western Conference Finals. And it just that's it. That's all they've done so far this season. They're still above 500, but man, I guess it's just not in the cards for. It just doesn't ever happen. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick ad break, and we will be back on the other side to wrap this thing up and look ahead to what's next for the Mavs as they hit the road. What's up, y'all? We're taking a quick break to tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Want to play Prize Picks alongside Drewski, Joe Budden, and MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code STEPBACK to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code STEPBACK on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Okay, so getting back to the fourth quarter, and we're going to end on a positive note, but before we get to that, we have to talk about Clay. He did not have a good shooting game. He was 4 of 13 overall, only 1 of 7 from 3. He did hit a really big 3, though. The Mavs were down. Let's see. They were down after Bradley Beal hit a driving layup with 5:47 left in the game. Clay hit his first 3 to put the Mavs up 100-98 off an assist from Luka. So that ended up, at that point, it's like, okay, maybe the lid has been taken off for him and the Mavs have finally found something. Didn't work out that way. Ended up losing. So Clay's got to be better. I keep looking at these bench numbers, DJ, and we've talked about it in previous pods. I get it. Clay is Clay. He's fully capable of being a starter. But given the lack of bench production and given the amount of ball dominance that Luka and Kyrie have in the starting lineup, I feel like the move from Kidd is to move Klay Thompson to the bench, to give the bench a scoring punch. And I know you're worried about how he's going to, handle that. I guess my thing is, if you're going to do something like that, you might as well go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off early and do it right now And then that way, if it just doesn't work out, you still have the majority of the season ahead of you to go back to where you were and do something else. Because I don't think Klay Thompson would have signed the contract that he signed for if he thought eventually coming off the bench was beneath him. Because he's not paid like a star anymore. He took less money. He could have gone and had a, $20 million a year with the Lakers, and he turned it down to come to Dallas. So I think Jason Kidd really needs to consider having this conversation with him. I know Kidd wants these other guys to step up, Quentin Grimes, uh, Spencer Dinwiddie, all these guys off the bench. I know he wants them to step up so he doesn't have to make that kind of decision. But at a certain point, you can't keep having your bench score single digits. That's just not sustainable. Not if you're going to have title aspirations. So that's what I'm thinking.
So here's my thing, and we already know about my concerns about losing Klay mentally, but let's just throw that out the window. So tonight in particular, and really last game too. Well, I guess our bench scoring was a little bit better last game, but tonight in particular, the main reason, you've already said this, the main reason our bench scoring was so bad is because we're missing a lot of our bench production to the injury reserve. You're missing Derek Lively. You're missing PJ Washington, who I personally would bring off the bench. Second, you mentioned the reason that Klay, or one of the reasons that Klay isn't getting the production that you would like to see in the starting lineup is because Luke and Kyrie are so ball dominant. I don't think that Klay is going to be very productive in a ball dominant role coming off the bench. I really don't. I think Klay is more of a set shooting player. And I think that being out there with two of the best creators in the league would utilize him better than having him come off the bench in a role where he has to create for himself more often. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I mean, Spencer Dinwiddie used to come off the bench. Tim Hardaway Jr. would typically play better when he was paired. Like when Tim Hardaway Jr. was coming off the bench, he typically played better, in my opinion, when he was paired with Dinwiddie coming off the bench, because then you don't have to worry about doing all that yourself. So that's kind of what I look like. Maybe you elevate Dinwiddie instead of like putting all that on him to pick up the scoring, because he's playing 20 plus minutes as it is. Dinwiddie is. So I mean, maybe don't force Klay into self-creating, but just pair him with a guy like that at all times, and maybe stagger his minutes with Luka and Kyrie.
That's what you have to do. You have to have a dominant ball handler in there with him. My hesitation with Dinwiddie though is he's just so unpredictable. He can be so erratic with the basketball and he's just really inconsistent with his decision making, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't know. Clearly something isn't working. Clearly a change needs to be made. I just don't know. I'd be hesitant to make that change personally. But I mean, if you're losing, what do you have to lose? I mean, what more do you have to lose, rather? More games? We're already losing.
Yeah. And shout out to Najee Marshall, who is an absolute dog.
Yep.
He was one of the major positives of this game. He's been on a streak. I mean, for the last, 3 games? 3 games now. He's just been a delight. He was the main catalyst, as you put it, for the Mavs eliminating that 13-point deficit at halftime. It was his high energy on both ends of the floor. There was a time where, I wouldn't say it wasn't like a full steam ahead transition, but he was bringing the ball up the court, and he had it around the 3-point line, and I thought like, oh, well, he's going to pass it out. And no, he put his shoulder down and just ran through whoever it was trying to defend him, and went in for the easy layup. And I was just like, man, he is relentless. So
he does a wonderful job of reading the floor, especially in that sort of mid-break, secondary break part of the offense where we're not truly in transition, but we're just sort of getting out of it, but everyone isn't quite back yet.
Yeah.
He did a really good job of that tonight. He made a really good read late in the game. And I want to say it either tied the game or it put us ahead. It was a big bucket. It's actually the play that you're describing where he put his shoulder down and went straight to the rim. That was during that secondary break where not everyone was back and it was still kind of helter-skelter out there,
Yeah.
both from an offensive and defensive perspective. And he read that perfectly and just walked right to the rim.
Yeah.
So I've been very impressed with him. He has a lot of IQ on both ends of the floor. He's going to help us if we can just figure everything else out. I mean, Najee Marshall is going to be a really, really key part of what we're trying to do here. But everyone else has got to come to play every night too. So,
yeah, Najee essentially filled in for the PJ role tonight, and he had 18 points, 5 rebounds, shot 7 of 12 overall, hit 2 of his 6 threes. We finally saw those corner threes start to go down, which is a good sign. So maybe he can keep that going as we move forward here. But man, I just, I look at that starting lineup and I see, the bench. The main area of concern for the bench is offense. And we know Clay can bring a decent amount of offense to the bench. Because look, there's times where Clay is out there with Luka and Kyrie, and it's almost I don't want to say it's almost too much, because obviously if you have 3 Hall of Famers out there on the floor at the same time, it's a good thing. But you know what I mean? Like it's almost like it's just too much clutter. And there's several times where Clay is just standing out there and he's not getting involved.
Well, that's the problem. It's not the fact of who is out there; it's what they're doing.
Right.
And unfortunately, the Mavericks have a very ISO heavy offense, and the backside moves very little, or the weak side rather moves very little, which is where Clay often finds himself. And unfortunately, that's an issue of game plan. That's an issue of strategy. That ain't a Clay, Kyrie, Luka problem. It
Yeah.
ain't their fault that, the game plan is let's put everyone on an island and watch someone work. That's not efficient. It's not sustainable, and it has to change. What's the point of having a gun if you don't know how to use it? Right?
Yeah.
Same scenario. Same exact scenario. And, I've praised Kid. Now I'm going to criticize Kid. The offense it's too stagnant. Nobody moves. Everyone just stands where they're originally planted. And even whenever we do get decent penetration, people are in the exact same spot that they were at the beginning of the possession, and nobody is open. That's one of the main reasons why Kyrie Irving turned the ball over whenever he got it into the teeth of the defense and couldn't find anybody because nobody was open.
Yeah, that late turnover late in the fourth, that was critical.
That's a prime example of what I'm talking about. And, I really hate to see that in this game because I thought last game they were moving without the ball very well. I thought everything was moving well. I thought the ball was moving. I thought people were moving. And I really feel like we took a step back as far as offensive efficiency was concerned today. Not just in terms of numbers, but how we were playing. And I'd really like to see us take steps back to what we were doing against the Bulls.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I agree with you. As much praise as we've given Kid, because you don't just, I get it. You have 2 of the best players ever on your roster, and then you add Clay to it. And, the last 3 years, Kid has had great success overall. You had that 1 year in between that wasn't great. But, I thought there would be a little bit more creativity thrown into the playbook, because that's how Clay thrived in Golden State was, with that flow offense, and the ball's just zipping around, and then it'll find him wide open in the corner at some point. And that's why I think he could at some point thrive off the bench, just because he would. I don't think he needs to self-create, but I do think he needs to be the focal point more often. Uh, to get the best out of him. And the best way to do that is to bring him off the bench. Always keep at least one ball dominant player alongside him. But, I think having all three of them out there at the same time, I don't know if that's going to be sustainable for the whole season. So we'll see how it goes. It's a long season. It's hard, man. It's as seamless as the fit is on paper, it's hard to get a guy who has never. He spent 13 years in Golden State, and now you add him into a new scenario, a new situation in Dallas. You have other key pieces like Quentin Grimes and uh, Najee Marshall, and you're trying to get everybody comfortable and set, and it's the early stage of the season. So I get it. There's going to be growing pains, but I do understand kids' frustration too, because there just seems to be like a lack of urgency from those bench guys, and really from the starters too, because you're getting out to these slow starts in most of these games. Like again, they were down double digits at the end of the first quarter. Mm-hmm. How many times have we said that here in the first 9 games? So you got to get it fixed. Obviously, getting Derek Lively and PJ Washington back will help, but they had Derek Lively and PJ Washington for that first game in Phoenix, and they lost that one by a wider margin. So, well, I don't know. I'm not going to overreact to the 9th game of an 82 game season, but it is frustrating, very, very frustrating. Okay, one more thing I want to talk about, and we'll get out of here. The Mavs now shift their attention to the road. I think it's Tuesday at Golden State. It'll be Klay Thompson's return to the Bay, and then they play the Nuggets as well. I'm trying to get that to pull up, but my internet is being very weird right now. The next 2 games, though, is the Nuggets and the Warriors. What are you expecting from that 2-game trip?
Do we have PJ and Lively back?
That's a tough question. I don't know.
My answer relies on that pretty heavily.
Lively is dealing with a shoulder sprain, and then PJ Washington is dealing with a knee sprain. And I know before the who did the Mavs play before the Bulls? I can't get that to pull up. But anyway, in the warm-ups of that game, he sprained his shoulder somehow, and that's why he's out. I don't know how PJ got hurt. I missed that one. But apparently he sprained his knee. So we'll see if they're both back. I'll be honest with you, DJ. I like our chances better against the Nuggets than I do the Warriors, just based on how both teams are playing right now. Because I mean, you want to talk about lack of depth off the bench. The Nuggets, the Nuggets are arguably worse than what the Mavs have been dealing with here lately. So, we'll see how it goes. But I am excited to see Klay return to the Bay, and I hope that this is his first real breakout game. I think he had 20 something points in that first game against San Antonio, the season opener. Since then, he's been a little quiet. He hasn't been terrible. He's still shooting nearly 40% from 3. At least he was before going 1 of 7 tonight. So maybe it'll be a breakout game for Klay. Maybe he'll start to have the old feelings and, being in his own, where he won so many championships. I can hope. I'm going to cross my fingers for it, but we'll see. Well, look, y'all, that's going to do it for another episode of Mavs Step Back Podcast. Unfortunately, we're not celebrating the Mavs' second big win of the season, but it's a long year, and we're going to pace ourselves. The sky isn't falling. It's just very annoying how that game went. When you lose by 1, and you can point to a handful of different things that the Mavs could have done better to prevent that from happening, it's just very annoying. Hindsight is 20/20, but man, if they can just pay attention to the small details throughout the course of a game, they'll be in a situation where, they're up 5+ at the end of this game and not having to rely on a half court heave from Luka to try and win it. So, guys, we appreciate it. Y'all have a great rest of your weekend, and we will see you next time. I'm not sure what the schedule is going to look like going forward. It may end up being like a quick solo recap pod, depending on depending on our schedules and the timing of the games and all that. I haven't looked at it yet, so we'll see. Y'all have a good one.